reading a book as a book historian often means not paying as close attention to the text as to the manifestation of the text, right? So thinking about a book like Moby Dick, and what this exhibit tries to do is show how over time Moby Dick has manifest in so many different ways, and each of those suggests a different style of reading the book, a different understanding of what the book is as a book and what you're going to get out of it. And I believe that as a book historian that the presentation of a text has a very profound effect on the reception of a text. So it doesn't determine it. It's not like because this is presented this way, you are going to read it this way. But it gives you visual clues, and it gives you a sense of the book that clues you in to a style of reading that then will affect the way you understand it. A lot of people, this is the copy they've read, right? Yeah, sure. The Penguin classic, Moby Dick. Starts out with a beautiful image on the cover, right? And then you get inside of it and you get a biographical note. And then you'll have a long introduction, longish introduction, about the text and how important it is in history of American literature. And then you're going to get a note on the text, right? And then you'll get to the text. And on the back, you're going to get blurbs saying this is one of the most important books of American literature, right? Okay, if you read this book and you start in reading and you get to a line that you don't understand, which is likely to happen with this book, right? Sure. There's going to be sentences that you go, what? I don't understand this. Are you going to say to yourself, this book is trash? Or are you going to say to yourself, I am personally inadequate to understand this great work of literature?
I would say it depends on the cover, right?
Right. It's not just the cover, right? It's the whole packaging.
Sure,
It's the whole marketing of that book.
Yeah.
So a book like that is suggesting it's giving primacy to the text.
Sure.
And you as a reader must rise to that text. Okay. An edition like this, right? Which has the sort of cartoonish cover and is thoroughly abridged. It has no introduction, right? It doesn't even start with "My name is Ishmael," right? It's got these sort of, other books in the series. It's got the sort of cheap dust jacket. If you pick this book up in a bookstore, you're likely to think this is a rousing adventure tale, right?
Sure.
It's genre fiction, right? So you're reading in this book, and you come to a line that you don't understand. What's more likely a response? This isn't a very good book.
Right.
This isn't that well written, right? The book had to rise to you rather than you rising to the book. And what happens with the formation of classics is that they keep getting repackaged in ways that put more and more onus upon the reader and take less and less onus off the book.
Yeah.
And so what we can see here in this exhibit is some of that going on. But here, Moby Dick is very much an adventure tale. It's a rousing, good story. And here, it is either the sort of the first editions that deserve critical reading, or it's the editions you read in a college course, right? So, which are full of apparatus.
Yeah. So the exhibit is the plurality of the whale, but it sounds like there's a plurality of texts too. Like you couldn't point to any particular object and say this is like the text of Moby Dick.
Right, because I think of the book itself as existing in a culture, right? And that culture has wrapped around that book, around that text, a whole lot of different clues to reading and to understanding. And so even if you're in 1950, you might have two editions. They may have read the same words, but they didn't read the same book. And that can have a profound effect on the way they understand that text. And the funny example, sort of the first edition, because it's sort of a great error in publishing
So this
history.
is the London?
So this is the first London edition of called The Whale, not called Moby Dick.
Yeah.
So there's nowhere here it says Moby Dick. And it's a triple decker, so it's a 3-volume, how a book would be, how most novels were published at that time. The publishers were working with some proof sheets that had been uncorrected by Melville, but they didn't realize that.
Did he send them to
They
the
had been,
publisher
yeah. He was trying to beat international copyright law. So he tried to get it published simultaneously in both countries, and because it was going to be such a great seller, which is kind of ironic. So the book comes out in England, and if you'll notice at the start, it starts right in with chapter 1. There are no extracts, right? There aren't all the pieces on whales. That's all relegated to the end, because any reasonable publisher in 1851, 1851, would have seen that as an appendix.
Right.
And so that's where they put it, in the appendix. The other thing that happened with this book is that the epilogue, where, spoiler alert, where Ishmael lives and everybody else dies, is left off. They didn't have that text.
He didn't send it to him, you think? Or
it got lost. Yeah, they didn't have the epilogue. So the British critics read this book, and at the end, the narrator is dead.
And that's it.
That's a pretty bad flaw for a 19th century novel. We might be okay with that now. We'd say, oh, it's his ghost, right? But in the 19th century, that would not have gone over so well.
If they managed to make it through all 3 volumes.
If they made it through it. The first American edition, on the other hand, had all the corrections that Melville intended.
Okay.
And so it is, this is textually a very different book, but it's also a different book in format. Right, with the triple-decker or the single format, but it starts with the etymology and the extracts, like it ought to, and it has the epilogue at the end.
So it had both high culture, or at least high culture aspirations at that time, and popular.
And it's a rousing goods adventure story, right? So you can market it as a great adventure story, while you're also marketing it as high culture. And so then you can appeal to multiple audiences with the same text. And they will give it different readings depending on which framework they're coming from.
Wow. This is wonderful. Thank you very much for talking with us.